Hello everybody, welcome to Untether.tv, where we have casual conversations with mobile rock stars. You know that. What I like to say is we actually grab the mobile rock stars by the legs, pin them down on the ground until they give us the answers that we need in order to be able to leverage what they've done into our own businesses. Lessons learned. So I have with me Patrick Kennedy, who is the CEO of Sidebar, and I want to just kind of, as I do, paint a little picture about what it is that most people today spend a lot of time, a lot of companies offering personalization capabilities on these little devices, the iPhone or any Android device or smartphones. And it's in isolation, it's in context to that one device. And I think what's really unique about Sidebar is we talk about three screen, we've talked about it a lot in this show. We talk about three screen, the capability of bringing games and movies onto all three screens. Well, what about the personalization side? How do you take the information about watching TV, about my purchase preferences, or what I'm doing online, and what I'm doing with these devices, and mash those all into a recommendation engine? And the ability to do that is what resides in Sidebar. So, Patrick, did I do okay there for?
I think you did very well. Thank you very much, and thanks for having me today.
Well, it's my pleasure. This is a topic that is near and dear to me, and obviously all the people who watch this show and my subscribers, because there's so much out there right now when it comes to personalization and creating the one-on-one relationship and pushing coupons and all that stuff based on my user preferences. So why don't you walk us through Sidebar? Why Sidebar? And when did you get there? What did you do before? Let's start with why Sidebar.
So I joined Sidebar about 18 months ago now, and for all of the things that you just mentioned, we started to see a couple of years ago, I think, when the Apple App Store had over 100,000 applications in it. That's when it really hit me that 100,000 applications means there's way too much stuff, and I as a user just can't find anything that I want. And then I started to think about what goes on with even my cable TV programming guide, where I have 500 channels that I have to sort through, and they're kind enough to allow me to select all of those 500s, the ones I want to watch. And really, I thought, there's an opportunity here and there's a need. So starting in mobile, the smartphone revolution really provided consumers the ability to get content on their phones the way they wanted it. And it's really when we saw consumers start to really show up and pay money for content on mobile. So for me, what I saw the opportunity was to give to consumers what they want, and the need was to give it to them in a way that they can actually comprehend it, and so that they don't have to sort through everything.
So it really was the amount of volume out there, because it's very loud right now. Even with, there's probably somewhere in the realm of 600,000 mobile applications across all these platforms. And obviously even, far greater. There's a company in the States called The Find that indexes, I think, 20 million products or SKUs. So it really is it's just so loud out there. And so Sidebar comes in and helps basically illuminate the things that you think you want or you didn't even know you want because of your preferences.
And that's just apps. That's one media type. When we look at all of the different things that are out there and our ability to get apps, games, music, movies, TV shows across our smartphones, as well as broadband portals, our iPads and other kinds of tablets, and on connected TVs, there's just so much content out there and so many different platforms to get it on. What smartphones taught us also is that giving consumers a picks and clicks interface is far superior to the one-size-fits-all that the internet browser really forced everyone into. And the thing that's really come to my mind lately is that we used to say this about the internet all the time, that the internet gives us infinite shelf space.
Yep.
And that's the biggest lie about the internet. Because the internet gives you infinite warehouse space. And in fact, when you look at the amount of time users spend in any site, and the drop-off you get from one page to the next page to the next page, you really only get about 3 shots to get something in front of consumer that they're looking for. You get about 3 screens worth.
Yeah.
And if you look at a smartphone screen, it's very similar to a TV. You can probably fit 12 things well on a screen in a picks and clicks user interface, where consumers go up, down, left, right, and enter.
Yep.
And that's the same with a remote control as it is on an iPad or on an Android phone. And that's very, very different from what we all came to expect in the browser world. And so what we're seeing now is the adoption of what I consider a much more user-friendly and natural interface, and one that demands that we get in front of the consumer within that first 2 to 3 screens of 10 to 12 things per screen, the right piece of content, the right message, and to use the information that we're already gathering about people to give them a far better experience.
So, I mean, even I know that this is a mass trend, obviously, because you know, we've been hearing for so long that our attention span is so short. You know, I think every human on the planet has been diagnosed or designated attention deficit disorder just because we say that. You know, it's 3 seconds on a screen. If it's not above the fold, you're done. And if you don't engage with them in the first 3 clicks, or all your content has to be within 2 clicks, you know, all that stuff we've heard. So we start to abide by those rules almost. Somebody told us, and now that's true. But it even happens with the big guys, like Facebook, for example, trying to get the unified inbox where they bring in the SMS messages and all your text messages and all of your email and all of your Facebook wall posts and everything, so that it paints a better picture for you about your communication that way. So this is not it's not isolated that this problem is happening. Everybody else, a lot of companies are trying to tackle certain aspects of it in their own way, aren't they?
No, that's absolutely true, and I think we're really just beginning. The next phase of web is the personal web, and it's the personal web across devices.
Yeah.
And when I look at what different internet sites are doing, there's several different ways to look at this. Whether it's on a smartphone, on a PC, on a TV, we can give recommendations within a fixed user interface. Yes. And many times a brand is saying, "Here's what I want someone to see." You know, Facebook. There's the start page that everyone's going to see. Or if you go to a TV guide, it's essentially the same type of TV guide. If you go to an app on a smartphone that's mixing sports scores and news and video highlights, everyone's seeing the same user interface. Yeah. But not everyone interacts with every piece of that user interface the same. When I go to the New York Times website, I only look at the politics section of the New York Times. But I never get presented that first. Why not? Right? So it's learning beyond the piece of content that someone's might be interested in, and certainly our platform can do that better than anyone else's. Yeah. But it's also knowing what types of content someone's going to want to look at and working to provide them a personalized experience. So when we look at the different axes, though, the reason this is just beginning and it's so complicated is you have all these different media types. You also have all these different devices. Yes. And then when you mix that across time of the day of the week, time of the month, you know, what happens with seasonality. Yeah. You know, the time factor is one that a lot of people don't, I think, grasp yet well enough. And, you know, my background in launching, you know, TV networks overseas and having been worked in Sony Pictures for a lot of years, coming from the content side of the house, you know, one of the things I always think about is, you know, there's a lot of content that has a pretty short shelf life. Yeah. So TV series, you know, they only last a certain amount of time, but also their popularity waxes and wanes each week. Yeah. When there's a big news story, everyone's tuning to CNN. And so users, you know, don't necessarily get the right recommendations at the right time. And what we're seeing now is technology such as sidebars that can give service providers, whether it's a store, you know, a music subscription service, a cable TV operator, give them the ability to address their users with the right content on the right platform at the right time.
It just seems that I'm going to continue with the right analogy. This is the right place to be because of the fact that we are inundated. I mean, people think that, you know, it's information overload everywhere, and all I want to do is find information that's relevant and pertinent to me. And whether that's in my inbox, you know, my mailbox, my inbox, my television, my mobile device, my tablet, it doesn't matter, and even my music preferences. You know, but some people will also say that I like to be exposed to all that. So, you know, I read the New York Times, and in order for me to get to the political section, I have to go through all the ads and all of the other news to get there, and I'm exposed peripherally to that information, but you know, absolutely I'm exposed to the advertising revenue or the advertising, well, just the advertisements in the newspaper. You think that obviously by bringing this information to a personalized level, you might lose the periphery, but you certainly are targeted easier for advertising and for the things that are interesting to you.
Well, I think that giving consumers a better experience is always a better business model.
Yes, yeah.
So
100%.
For someone to wade through something that they're simply not interested in, I would argue that you'll find the revenues to support that.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that you don't allow users to see things that you don't know that they're going to like. In fact, that's a big part of our business, and a big part of what we look at is the serendipity factor.
Yeah.
So not only giving people the things that we know that they're really going to look at, but giving them some other things. Maybe it's things that their friends like. Maybe it's just things that are very popular in the moment in the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
There's always this kind of probing around the edges so that we really get to see the true boundaries of an individual's preferences. And that's where the wonder of discovering something new that you didn't know you were ever going to like is still very important.
Yeah.
But we don't think that you need to force someone to look at something just because they always have in the newspaper where you had to open the front section in order to get to the sports, etc.
Well, the paradigm has certainly shifted. No longer, should I be relying on following a bunch of clicks, like the hyperlink on a website. It should know my preferences. It should be a little bit smarter. But the whole paradigm around even television, newspapers, and the way you interact with those is not the same as it was 5 years ago. Even newspapers or magazines, just the name of those, or a network, a television network, right, is starting to lose its value because of this exact reason, where people are expecting much more information that's tailored to them, and they don't want to pay for all the other stuff that's of just no interest. And I think we're heading in that direction, wouldn't you say?
No, absolutely. And I think that consumers will, though, pay either through advertising support or for subscription services. Consumers will gravitate to those services that are well personalized for them.
Yeah.
And they will have a higher switching cost as they have a brand relationship with someone. So, one of the things that I love about Netflix is it knows a lot about me and my movies.
Yeah.
And switching to some other service provider, I would have to abandon that learning.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that we offer value to our customers, whether it's a mobile network or an IPTV or cable TV provider, is the ability to work with their users to learn about them in a way that their users appreciate and understand. And building that level of sophistication gives the users an experience that they like, so that when they get an email from their cable TV provider telling them what movies are on VOD this week, they're actually going to look at it because they know it's going to be something relevant to them. Or when the system recommends, hey, you might want to record this show, people who watch what you're watching really like this, or based on your viewing experiences, this is something we think you're going to like, you're going to pay attention to that, and you're going to then value that so much more. So it's bringing this, editorial process really down to the individual level. And that's, I think, hugely valuable for people.
It's funny because, just as an aside, I think everybody just stopped breathing when you said that they would appreciate an email from their cable service provider at some point, because that's a lofty goal. But, I think what we're entering here might be that, the way that you say it's so competitive in the cable space and the on-demand and entertainment space because of Netflix. Netflix is a true disruptor in this. And so the cable companies and the providers are going to have to offer something that's a little bit more unique, a little bit more than just the programming that they're offering, because that only goes so far. So are we entering the era of the personalization? Is that the value add that keeps customers? As you said, you won't leave Netflix because they know so much about you and they're making good recommendations. Is that where we're all headed, where it's going to be content is available everywhere, but it's how you're treated as a customer and the personalization that comes as a result of how well your service providers know you? Well,
I certainly think so, and that's why I'm at Sidebar.
Okay.
But even as a consumer, it's interesting because since I've been here, I've noticed myself getting angry at different, whether it's my cable TV service or a specific news service, some apps I have, because I know that they're tracking what I watch, yeah, they're cooking what I look at, and I don't know what they're doing with that data. I don't mind them having it, but frankly, I'd like the benefit of that, and I'd like them to understand, hey, Patrick, we know that you're going to always look at this, so let's at least put that at the top of the page.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think there's a big distinction is, in the world of analytics, you gather all this data and you crunch it, and then you present it at board meetings and you try to figure out what it means for your business.
Right.
And what we do in the personalization space is to take much less data, but to take data that's highly useful and to perform real-time processes on that data to give consumers changes to the product or to the experience that they're using right there.
Yeah.
And so giving users the benefit of what you're tracking and giving them a better experience, I think that's where it's all going.
Well, I mean, I 100% agree. I think that, the power is in the data. And I think there's even more power in using the data effectively. So let's talk about Sidebar. You came over to the company as a direct result of this huge opportunity that you're seeing in the marketplace, and all it's done is accelerate over the last 18 months.
Sure.
It's much worse today in terms of the amount of noise than it was 18 months ago. But what state? I'll throw out a general question here, because when you joined 18 months ago, at that stage, in wherever we were in this stage of personalization, to today, have you seen a massive change in where you were going to go, or is it pretty much a straight lines over that 18 months?
Well, I think there's two answers to that. And first of all, as a company, when I joined, the company was on a consumer footing and was looking to give consumers a way to use their smartphones to find the content that they wanted to see, and to pay for that with personalized advertising. And so shortly after I joined the company, we actually did a consumer trial on Android and BlackBerry, which we used to validate our back-end engine and to learn a lot about the way that you leverage user interface with users, the way that you communicate with them, the way that you use advertising, and to be able to test our model scientifically against the value of our personalization engine. And that was obviously very successful, and said to us, well, there's a huge opportunity here. As a startup, we didn't have all the content or all the marketing dollars to get millions of consumers to use our app. But we did have an amazing technological capability and understanding of how to implement it that a lot of other folks, even some of our content providers in that consumer trial, valued a lot. And so we went from a consumer business to selling actually to other businesses in a B2B model. And so the first company that we sold to was a company called India Games. They're the largest mobile games provider in India, and they work across a number of carriers. And so we've powered now a games portal with India Games on Idea Cellular, which is 65 million subs in India. And that's a business where we're providing recommendations across a games catalog. Very specific usage model, really showcases our technology against one value proposition. I have to say that we're excited that we can work across multiple content types as well as multiple devices, because our second customer was a company called TakeNet in Brazil, and they're the music platform provider for Telecom Italia in Brazil. So TIM is a 47 million subscriber network in Brazil. They're really the leading, I think, the leading value-added services provider in Brazil, really pushing the market there in terms of content adoption. And we're working with TakeNet to create a personalized music service across apps, in terms of a on-device portal access to the service through WAP and through web, giving consumers a very personalized opportunity to explore, discover, and purchase music, ringtones, and other types of content.
You see,
that
would strike, both of those strike me as incredible opportunities, because I mean, I came from the mobile gaming side. I did operations for a company called Magmic, and the competitive factors, especially in the J2ME category, in the Java games. So for feature phones, it was incredible, because if you didn't release every week, you got bumped off the deck on the carrier, and you were basically the long lost tail. With some of those carriers. So bringing those games back up does two things, and the music as well does two things. Obviously, it brings the company joy, maybe for additional sales that maybe weren't there before, but it opens up revenue opportunities for the carriers or for the providers, doesn't it? Because that game that is buried 1,000 games deep, and is left for dead, is a new game to a new customer, right? So it's not old, and bringing that information up based on their own recommendation or previous purchases, I think is a lost opportunity for a lot of these guys, a lot of these providers.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, and that's what's really exciting about our industry sector, and actually about Sidebar, because, for example, in the games world, in India Games, we've been able to effectively increase the revenue profile of the long tail by just what you said, finding out which of those games that may have been poorly performing in the past actually are really relevant to consumers today and pushing those into the top 20. So you'd be surprised by what percentage of the top games sold through that portal are things that Sidebar's system actually discovered in the content catalog and made popular because they really resonate. And that's really exciting, because if we can flatten out that demand curve a few percentage here and there, we can generate a very significant return. And that doesn't work only in games. It can work across TV shows, music, any kind of content, where you're taking advantage of the entire catalog that you've spent the money ingesting, warehousing, and making ready for consumers. And instead of just selling the top 10% of it, now we can find that you can sell the entire catalog. And that's really exciting, especially because some of that long tail stuff has much higher margin contribution to the service provider.
Most of it's already made its money already, so everything from this point forward, well, most of it, a good portion of it has made some money already, so, and left for dead. I even think of blogs, video podcasts. Something that I'm doing here with Untether is that I have 220 episodes of Untether, yeah, it's lost because of the structure of the website, the fact that nobody's going to take the time to go through. Even if they do, you know, something I did a year ago that's still relevant. It takes a lot of effort to bring that to the forefront. So, you know, it just seems to me that this is a natural extension of everything that everybody does when it comes to media consumption, game consumption, or content consumption, even shopping. I'm getting excited.
You know, for us, it's really exciting. You know, we're also, you know, imagine what a user-generated site looks like. So if you have a user-generated content site, where it's entirely, you know, it's much of the content is long tail, so to speak. To be able to really present that in a way that's compelling, especially if you're in the mobile world, that's something that we're excited about, and it's a project that we've got our sights on right now.
So give us an example. Aside from the carrier stuff, can you talk about things that you're doing in the mobile space that you are excited about, that are bringing some real value to either merchants or any other companies or consumers?
So, you know, I can't talk about some of the other deployments that we're working on, but I'll tell you what we are excited about.
Sure.
And what we're really excited about is basically there's a couple of big things happening right now. One, being able to incorporate outbound messaging into an overall solution is something that we're very excited about doing, because it allows us to essentially take a retail store, if you will, whether it's a subscription service or a transaction-based service. And, you know, with our smart menu solution, what we do is we put in front of the consumer, once they get to the store, the right content. So it's the right things for them. Secondarily, by incorporating that same intelligence into outbound messaging, promotional emails or SMS texts that go out, we're able to get that consumer back to the store more often, and to turn those emails or SMS messages from what consumers may see as a spam message into a highly directed and personal communication that they're going to value a lot more. So that's one thing that we're very excited about for this year. The second thing is applying this model across different types of devices and really working on this TV everywhere kind of solution, where consumers today, you know, cable companies, IPTV providers, they're all realizing they need to access their customers wherever their customers are, whatever device they're on, and whatever time of day it is. And that's a natural for us, because when we look at what cable TV companies are doing with smartphone apps, what they're doing on their broadband portals, this is an opportunity for Sidebar to leverage our cloud-based solution to provide personalization across all of those different devices. And we can differentiate, you know, time of the day, what people are going to want to see at a certain time of the day, by device type. And we can also just take a look at, you know, how do we make recommendations for recording your DVR, for example. Something as simple as that, where we can mine what someone's doing and give them what they're going to want to see.
So when you look at this, was this... did you go out and talk to customers first, or was it kind of a hypothesis that you put together and said, listen, we're going to build this and then go out and do some testing on it? We know what happened with the consumer side, and then when you worked with India Games, was it them that was helping direct you on this, or did you guys know what to do when you walked in?
Well, that's a great question, and certainly we have a wonderful partnership with India Games, and I think that there's value that we each bring to each other, and we had a series of ongoing conversations around that.
Yeah.
That said, we're not the first guys in this market, and we've been able to look at what other companies have done and to look at what we think some of the challenges and opportunities remaining are. Yeah. And certainly we're talking to customers all the time and talking to them about what their pain points are.
Yeah.
And for us, our solution is only as good as the pain that it solves.
Right.
And so there's a couple of key things that we can do. Is one, provide a consistent user experience across devices that's relevant to the time of the day and all of that, right?
Yep.
Secondarily, we can increase sales where there is transaction-based stores, whether it's games or music. But I think the third thing that we're really seeing, and where the great promise is when we talk to these, whether they're cable TV providers or music subscription service providers, is looking at retention. Yeah. And so providing consumers a personalized service that understands what they like and that grows with them, that evolves over time. So we don't put someone in a pigeonhole and just say, oh, well, you like this, so therefore you're always going to like this. What we've spent a lot of time working on is how do we use serendipity? How do we use other tools? How do we use external data sources to constantly challenge our perception of a user and to give them an experience that's going to delight them? And that's really hitting against this pain point about retention and churn. Because a customer loses someone because maybe they're just not happy. Maybe they're trying to cut their budget. Maybe they're switching to a competitor. When we provide personalization into that service, we really think that helps with the retention end of this thing.
Well, I would think so, and I think about some of the radio, the internet radio stations that are out there that force you to listen to relevant music to what your preferences are. They insert it there, say, well, if you like this, you're going to definitely like this as a result. And I think that Amazon obviously was one of the first companies to do this when it came to personalization and pulling up the long tail, and they've done a great job. But certainly, there's always room for here. I always marvel at this, because when you get big enough and you start to do some transactions like you're doing with India Games, and the user base that is so massive, you collect a lot of this information and it goes up into the cloud and it sits there. So you form basically personas of certain types of people, I'm sure, that are out there, and that's really where a ton of value is. So that you walk into a new business that is looking for the service, and you can say, well, look, we've got all this metadata of a typical user in these categories. We can just bring that with us. Can you do that, or is that's got to be part of the value of Sidebar? Is that anonymous collection and creating those personas?
For us, there's a couple of key points here. One, we get smarter with everything that we do, and that helps us address the next customer.
Like every transaction, right? Every single interaction, you get smarter.
That's absolutely true. And part of the value that we bring to our customers is that we work with each new service provider to define the best experience for them. So Sidebar is not a cookie cutter, one-size-fits-all approach. We actually analyze their data, their historical data. We look at the consumer value proposition, and we can define a unique API for that customer that's really going to optimize their own results.
Right.
Now, that said, there's a couple of key things that we have to say. One, we don't collect, nor do we want any personally identifiable information. So that's not something that we want. It's not something that we take.
Nobody does.
We use codes. So, and secondarily, we also respect the data that our customers allow us to transact against. So we're not in the business of taking data from TakeNet in Brazil and selling it to the next guys, or from Tim's customers, because we're really providing a service to Telecom Italia in Brazil against their customer base, and we want to respect that relationship. Now, that said, what we do learn is a lot about how content consumption can be patterned in a general way. Yeah. And those are things that help us define better solutions for the next customer beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, and great answer. I mean, it's what what you want to hear when you're interacting with one company, that it's not being brought over to the next one. And every single company, regardless if it's even in the same space, has a different business model, different business initiatives, and different data. So every single one of your customers is a unique, identified company that you can't apply a cookie cutter to. It wouldn't work.
Well, it's so true. And when we go into a new customer, there are different scenarios. When you have a service that people use 6 times a day, that's very different from a service that people like show up to buy a game a few times a month.
Yeah.
And as a company, what we need to provide, therefore, is a comprehensive set of tools. And so that's what Sidebar brings to the table. Everything from data enhancement tools, when we're looking at the metadata, as you said, to statistically modeling different scenarios, providing the ability to cluster users, cluster content, and then to use even those as inputs into a very complicated machine learning or artificial intelligence-based system that we use to create the dynamic results that we do. We can also then, of course, put business rules into our optimization engine on the back end of the whole system. And when you really stack those four things against each other, it becomes relatively this complicated solution. And part of the value that Sidebar brings is we understand how this works. We can take the best of each of these different items of technology and put them together in the way that's really going to optimize the overall effect.
All right, so I got two questions for you, and hopefully you can find an answer for these ones. Is that the first one is really around that user experience. So if I'm a customer of one of your customers, and and they've implemented the Sidebar technology, what kind of experience should I be able to see or experience as a result of your technology in their business?
Well, that's a great question, and so. If we take, for example, the music store for Tim in Brazil, what customers can expect is that they're going to see music selections based on their own experience with the store and based on the overall trends in the marketplace and content that's similar to other content they've bought, etc. But what they should expect to see is that initially they'll be getting some pretty good recommendations, but after really the fourth or fifth visit to the service, they're going to be getting content that's very personalized to them and
pushed to them, like at the top, right?
Yes, exactly. And this is an important point, though. What Sidebar delivers is the intelligence behind the service, but we don't design the user interface. It's and different customers are looking at different things. In some cases, the entire store is personalized. So there's no reason why I should see new songs that I'm never going to look at. So whether it's the new category or the featured category or just for you, which is where we look at providing our recommendations, is really it's a just for you section. Any of those should be personalized. So don't waste any real estate giving people the same top 10 new songs. Doesn't matter. Yeah. And so that's really it's around. I as a user show up to a site or to a service or log into the store through my app. And I'm going to see content that's relevant to me. Yeah. And the other thing that's interesting is when we look at how do we go beyond that, and so the next phases of either this or other implementations, when it's music and games and news, not only will I see the individual pieces of content in any one category, if I only ever look at news and games and never look at the music, then I should only see news and games. And that's something that Sidebar can implement.
So, and now take this out. That's exactly, in my head, the way that I envision this, and it's something that you can now project into everything, any consumable media, or even any retail experience. Obviously, if I only buy one type of shoe or one type of jean, when I walk in that store, maybe you tailor a coupon or you tailor the experience directly for me. This might seem like a silly question, but I'm full of them, silly questions. What I need to understand is that when you went out to the market with the product, was it an easy sell? Was it a hard sell? Did you have to try to convince somebody? How did you make that first sale? India Games is a perfect example. You have to get it, or do people get it, or are you out there educating people on why they need this product?
That's a great question, and it's actually something that's changed dramatically over the last 12 months.
Yeah.
So with India Games, we had a customer, and I would say that they're an enlightened customer, and they were looking at how do they increase their revenue. And when we looked at the solution that they were giving their consumers and what we could do differently, it made very clear sense that our solution would be of great value to them. So that was relatively easy.
Yeah.
The thing that's really changed between 2010 and the meetings that we're taking the last couple of months is that over the last 12 months, we started really selling personalization and what it can do for a service. And the last couple of months, every meeting that we're having, the companies already know that they need it. And so we're selling the concept a lot less and selling our specific solution a lot more. And that is something that we're happy to see and helps our sales cycle as well.
Absolutely.
We're getting a lot more customers who know they need something, and they may not know yet what they need. Yeah. And so then we get to talk through all of the different things that we offer as a company. But it's a little bit easier conversation today.
Yeah. So obviously a tipping point happened somewhere in 2010 that people realize there's so much noise out there that they have to figure out a way to rise above, and there's revenue that they're leaving on the table, and that's where Sidebar comes in.
Absolutely. There's revenue that they're leaving on the table, whether it's the form of higher transactions or reducing your churn and making customers happier. Wow. And what we think is that if you give consumers an experience that they love, they'll stay with you a little bit longer.
Well, it's good advice. It's good advice. Well, Patrick, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this and talking to us about Sidebar and the trials, the tribulations, the efforts that have gone into pushing the product out. And great to hear that there's some success in some of the customer base, and hopefully we'll see much more of what you guys are doing in 2011. Well,
thank you, Rob, for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Well, this has been great. I've been speaking with Patrick Kennedy, who's the CEO of Sidebar. You can reach out to them at sidebar.com. And this is another episode of Untether.tv in the bag. Thanks for watching, everybody.